And there's students of the Torah. It's Ray. We're back with part 2 of Tetzavah. And we were just reading about the making of what I believe is the Urim and the Thummim, though I'm not sure. We were talking about setting the stones into the ephod. You put on, he said, take 2 onyx stones. That's the black one. On the names of one of these onyx stones, you write 6 tribes with the work of an engraver in stone, and then you write the 6 names on the other stone with the work of an engraver, like the engraving of a signet shall you engrave the 2 stones with the names of the children of Israel. Then you shall make them to be set in the ounces of gold. That's the up here. So I do believe this is the Urim and the Thummim we're talking about. That was a method by which the high priest would receive information directly from Yehovah when he would ask a question. This is where we get the idea of, oh, there's an angel on my shoulder and a devil on my shoulder. It's a binary form of communication. You either get a positive answer or a negative answer. That's a 0 or a 1, you know. And that says, well, I guess actually, well, 1 would be positive, 0 would be negative. But it's a binary form of communication. Let's see. You should put the 2 stones upon the shoulders of the ephod for stones of a memorial for the children of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before Yehovah upon his 2 shoulders for memorial. And you shall make ouches of gold, and the 2 chains of pure gold at each ends of wreathed work shall you make them, and fasten the wreathed chains in the ouches. So remember, pure gold is very malleable and soft, so they would have to be pretty delicate with this thing. And you shall make them the breastplate of the judgment with cunning work. After the work of the ephod you shall make it. Of gold, of blue, of purple, and of scarlet, and of fine twined linen shall you make it. 4 square it shall be, being doubled. A span shall be the length of it, a span shall be the breadth of it. And you shall set it in the settings, and you shall set in the settings of the stones, even 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be of a sardius, a topaz, a carbuncle. This shall be the first row. And of course, some of these words like the carbuncle, it's a possible translation of what it means. And the second row shall be an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. And the third row, a ligure, an agate, and an amethyst. And the 4th row, a beryl, and an onyx, and a jasper. They shall be set in gold in their enclosings. And the stones shall be the names of the children of Israel, 12 according to their names, like the engravings of a signet. Every one with his name shall they be according to the 12 tribes. And they shall make upon the breastplate chains at the ends of the work, pure gold. And you shall make upon the breastplate 2 rings of gold, and you shall put in the rings in the 2 ends of the breastplate. And you shall put the 2 wreathed chains of gold in the 2 rings which are at the ends of the breastplate. And the other 2 ends of the 2 wreathed chains you shall fasten into the alches, and put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod before it. And you shall make 2 rings of gold, and you shall put them upon the 2 ends of the breastplate in the border thereof, which is the side of the ephod inward. And the 2 other rings of gold shall you make, and put them on the 2 sides of the ephod underneath, towards the forepart thereof, over against the other couplings thereof, above the curious girdle of the ephod. And they shall bind the breastplates by the rings thereof unto the rings of the ephod, with lace of blue, that it may be above the curious girdle of the ephod, and that the breastplate may be loosed from the ephod. And Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart, when he shall goes into the holy place, for a memorial upon Yehovah continually. So that goes to show you that they literally thought that the heart was the place where you understood things at. Because he said, put these names over your heart when you come before me. And before we talked about the heart, at the beginning of Exodus 28, is the heart, says, send me the men that are wizened of heart. And Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel upon the breastplate of his heart. And you shall put into the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, then they shall be upon Aaron's heart. And when he goes in before the Lord, and Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. And they shall make the robe of the ephod of all blue, and there shall be a hole in the top of it, in the midst thereof. And it shall have a binding of woven work around and about the hole, as if it were a hole of a habergeon, that it not be rent. And beneath upon the hem of it they shall make pomegranates of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and round about the hem thereof the bells of gold upon them round about it. So pomegranates and bells. And that's what we talked about, being almost like a ground to touch the Holy of Holies. When the high priest would enter in, it would probably ground him to the floor as he entered. A golden bell and a pomegranate upon the hem of the robe round about. It shall be upon Aaron to minister, and his sound shall be heard when he goes in unto the holy place before Jehovah, and when he comes out, that he die not. Now, if anyone is bothered by my pronunciation of Jehovah, I apologize if you feel like it's inappropriate to pronounce the name of God. And if you feel like I'm mispronouncing the name of God, I apologize there too. But according to the research that Nehemiah Gordon has recently published, there are over 1,000 manuscripts containing vowel points that do say that the correct pronunciation of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is Yehovah. In fact, it was even found with different vowel points that still pronounce the same way when you actually read them out. They still pronounce as Yehovah. There's been no historical document that shows it pronounced as Yahweh or Yahuwah or anything like that. Usually they write it with no vowel points so that you may not pronounce it. And of course some teachers say that's because it's actually not his real name. It's an abbreviation of the 70-letter name of God, which is ineffable and can only be spoke by the high priest once a year at Yom Kippur, which, that's neither here nor there, maybe so. And you shall make a plate of pure gold, and engrave upon it like the engravings of the signet, holiness to Jehovah. Okay? And you shall put it on the blue lace, that it may be upon the mitre, that's the headpiece, and upon the forefront of the mitre. So he says literally, take and write in gold, holiness to Jehovah, and write it upon your head, and put it there. And that's, remember, he says, take my word, write it upon your forehead, like frontlets between your eyes. Write it on your hand. In the New Testament, where it says we're going to cast our crowns down, this is the crown. Think of it as the reason, why would you cast your crown down? Because the office of high priest is no longer open to us. It is Yeshua's office now. So you need to throw down that crown and say, I'm unworthy to be the high priest. I need you to be the high priest now. I apologize again. I did contract some bacterial pneumonia from one of our foster children. So, but I'm on the get better, believe me. And it shall be upon Aaron's forehead that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things, which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts, and it shall always be upon his forehead, that he may be accepted to Jehovah. And it shall be embroidered in the coat of linen, that you shall make the mitre of fine linen, that you shall make the girdle of needlework. And for Aaron's sons you shall make coats, and you shall make them girdles, and bonnets shall you make for them for the glory of their beauty. And you shall make and put upon Aaron and his brother, his sons with him. You shall anoint them and consecrate them and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. Now, the making of the quote-unquote bonnets is what it says in the King James. But the making of the turban hat, it can also be translated to mean a small hat, which is why Orthodox Jews and conservative Jews, heck, lots of Jews in general, will wear a kippah, which is a head covering, because as they're instructed by their rabbi, they are the royal priesthood. Now, they wear the kippah because the sons of Aaron were instructed to have a mitre made for them, or a bonnet, here is what it says in the King James, which is not quite as elaborate as the one that the high priest wore, but it is a hat that covers your head. And like I said, one of the translations for what that Hebrew phrase for that's translated turban in some Bibles can be also translated as a small hat, which is what the kippah is, a small hat. All right. And you shall put them upon Aharon your brother and his sons with him. You shall anoint them and consecrate them and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priestly office. And you shall make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness. From the loins even unto the thighs shall they reach. And they shall be upon Aaron and upon his sons. And when they come in unto the tabernacle congregation, or when they come near unto the altar to minister in the holy place, that they bear not the iniquity and die. It shall be of a statute forever unto them, and his seed after them. So you have to wear the appropriate garments to come into the presence. All right, this is the one thing And this thing shall you do. This is chapter 29, by the way. We're in Exodus 29 currently. We're reading Torah Portion, Tetzavah, which is, and you shall command, which features, and I was going to put in the description, but it's so difficult to write a description that's that complicated on the phone, one-handed, that I'm just going to do it later. Tetzavah means you shall command. It's Exodus 27:20 to 30:10. And it also includes Ezekiel 43:10 to 27, Romans 12, and to Romans 13. And I apologize for the rapidness with which I'm reading this, but I've got to beat that nap time clock. So here we go. If I see any words that are really strange or interesting, I'll make sure to stop and look them up in the Strong's Concordance, just to see what some other interpretations of those words might be. And this is the thing that you shall do unto them to hallow them, to minister unto me in the priest's office. Take 1 young bullock and 2 rams without blemish, and unleavened bread, and cakes unleavened tempered with oil, and wafers unleavened anointed with oil. Of wheat flour shall you make them, and you shall put them in 1 basket, and bring them in the basket with the bullock and the 2 rams. And Aharon and his sons they shall bring unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall wash them with water. And you shall take the garments and put upon Aaron the coat and the robe of the ephod and the breastplate, and gird him with a curious girdle of the ephod. And you shall put the mitre upon his head, and put the holy crown upon the mitre. See, there's the crown, as I said before. Then you shall take the anointing oil and pour it upon his head and anoint him. So you put the clothes on first, then pour the oil on. And you shall bring his sons and put coats upon them, and you shall gird them with girdles, Aharon and his sons, and put the bonnets on them. And the priest's office shall be theirs for a perpetual statute, and you shall consecrate Aharon and his sons. Fill the hand up. Says a little note here, the amount of oil is a handful of oil is put on them in the Mashiaching. It's interesting. Let's look at 29:7. 29:7, because I believe what we're going to see here is the word Mashiach in the Hebrew, which that's where the word Messiah comes from. And there it is. In fact, it's first it's mishkah, which is anointing, shaman, oil. That has an interesting cognate in English, shaman. Yatsek, rosh, that's head. Mashak. So put and mashak him on the head. So he's being mashiached, which means to be anointed. So when you say, oh, Yeshua is the Mashiach, that means he is the anointed one. He's the high priest. Even though later we'll also see kings and, we'll see kings and prophets be anointed. But in the Torah, only the high priest was anointed. All right, so now we've seen them get hallowed, we've seen him get anointed, or we've seen him, that is to say, be Mashiached. And you shall bring his sons and put coats upon them, and you shall gird them with girdles, Aaron and his sons, and put the bonnets on them. The priest's office shall be theirs for a perpetual statute, that you shall consecrate Aaron and his sons. And you shall cause a bullock. Now, of course, you're going to be like, well, if it's a perpetual thing, then it's probably olam. It's probably when it says it'll be a perpetual thing. We'll look up the definition of what olam means. Because a lot of people will say, well, it's forever, but this isn't like there's no concept of infinity that existed at this time. There's no concept of zero that existed at this time. It was not until, I think, the Muslims in the Middle Ages actually came up with the concept of using zero as a number. Excuse me. But there's no really concept of infinity. It really means to the horizon. So when he says forever, think of it more as in, as far as you'll be able to see or understand, that is how long it will continue. It's not saying like it's not like a line that proceeds forever in one direction on a timeline. If anything, they probably had a cyclical view of time, because you see, Solomon even says there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that's happening now has happened before, because he's literally suggesting that time itself is a circle that continues and goes and goes. The Mobius strip, or the snake that eats its own tail, in that sense. Just remember that when you see things like forever and perpetual. It doesn't necessarily mean time extending into infinity. It means to what a person can see on the horizon. So as far as our eyes can see, until such time as he says it's changed, that's what it is. So just get used to it. Alright, you shall cause a bullock to be brought before the tabernacle of the congregation, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the bullock. You shall kill the bullock before Jehovah by the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and you shall take of the blood of the bullock, and put it upon the horns of the altar with your finger, and pour all the blood beside the bottom of the altar. And you shall take all the fat that covers the innards, and the caul that is above the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is above them, and burn them upon the altar. And the flesh of the bullock, and his skin, and his dung, shall you burn with fire without the camp. It is a sin offering. That's interesting. That the dung and the skin is a sin offering. And you shall also take one ram, and Aaron and his sons, and put their hands upon the head of the ram. It almost makes me wonder if he's saying that our skin is an unclean thing, as just like our dung is an unclean thing. But maybe what's inside is not unclean, because those are the things that are not exposed to the outside world. And if you think about the tabernacle itself being made of quote-unquote badger skins, that's an unclean animal. Could it be a representation of who we are? I mean, I think yes, obviously. But that's just something to consider. Maybe that's why he's making sure that they know that that is a sin offering. The skin and the dung. And you shall slay the ram, and shall take his blood and sprinkle it round about the altar, and you shall cut the ram in pieces, and wash the innards of him and his legs, and put them into pieces and onto his head. And you shall burn the whole ram upon the altar. It is a burnt offering of Jehovah. It is a savor flavoring, an offering made by fire. So in this case, the skin and the dung was not a unclean thing. It was not burned outside of the camp. When I say unclean, I just mean it's being burned outside of the camp. This is all being burned on the altar together. By the way, this is when you make a Passover offering, you burn the entire thing and then eat it, which, if you really think about it, is super gross, because that means all the internal, the dung and the urine and everything else that's inside that lamb is still in that lamb when you're burning. By the way, and you're burning his hairy carcass. Burnt animal hair reeks. So you can imagine that the Passover fires were not a pleasant smell to the people that were there, who were actually having to smell these animals being burnt in whole upon the altars. Cut the ram into pieces, wash his innards, burn him upon the altar. And he even says, it is a sweet savor, an offering made by fire unto Jehovah. It's like, even though you don't think it smells good, Jehovah thinks it does. And you shall take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. And then you shall kill the ram, and you take his blood and put it on the tip of the right ear of Aaron and upon his sons, right? So here we see them being anointed or mashiached with blood. And upon the thumb of their right hand, and upon the great toe of their right foot. Sprinkle the blood upon the altar round about. Now you might ask yourself, why is it only the right side? Well, traditionally people think of right as righteousness. A right-handed person is an obedient person, while a left-handed person is a sinister person. Right in Latin is dexter. Left is sinister. You hear the word sin in left-handedness. I know these things because I'm left-handed. A person who's left-handed, their brain processes right side first, then it transfers to the left side, then it comes out of their mouths. Because the right side of your brain is the creative, quote-unquote, emotional side of the brain. It's the feminine side of the brain. While the left side of the brain is the masculine, quote-unquote masculine, or organized side of the brain, which is to say it's logical. It's orientated around language, skills, and stuff like that to create order. So if the right side of the brain wants to speak, it must first send its message to the left side, the left side then approves of it, then it comes out of your mouth. So if you manage to find somebody who, and there are people out there who actually have both halves of their brain are actually separated. Usually it's from a surgery where they cut the corpus callosum in half because the person was having severe seizures or something like that, because the two halves of their brain literally just would not communicate properly, and they separate them. And those people can actually use both hands independently, simultaneously, and both eyes independently, simultaneously. Literally, it's like having two different people inside one head. Very fascinating stuff to study. All right, let's see. You shall take the ram and its blood on the right ear, and you shall take the blood that is upon the altar and the anointing oil, and sprinkle it upon Aaron and upon his garments, upon his sons, and upon the garments of his sons. And he shall be hallowed in his garments, and his sons' garments with him. And also you shall take of the ram the fat and the rump, and the fat that covers the innards, and the caul that is above the liver, and the two kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, and the right shoulder, for it is a ram of consecration. And 1 loaf of bread, and 1 cake of oil bread, and 1 wafer out of the basket of unleavened bread that is before Jehovah. And you shall put all in the hands of Aaron, and in the hands of his sons. You shall wave them for a wave offering before Jehovah. And you shall receive them of their hands, and burn them upon the altar for a burnt offering, for a sweet savor before Jehovah. It is an offering that is made by fire unto Jehovah. And you shall take the breast of the ram of Aaron's consecration, and wave it for a wave offering before Jehovah, and it shall be your part. And you shall sanctify the breast of the wave offering, and the shoulder of the heave offering which is waved, and which is heaved up, of the ram of the consecration, even of that which is for Aaron, and of that which is for his sons. And it shall be for Aaron and for his sons by the statute forever, for the children of Israel, and for it as a heave offering. And it shall be a heave offering from the children of Israel, of the sacrifice of peace offerings, even their heave offering unto Jehovah. And the holy garments of Aaron shall be his sons after him, to be anointed therein, and to be consecrated in them. Excuse me. And that his son that is a priest in his stead shall put them on 7 days, when he comes into the tabernacle congregation to minister in the holy place. And you shall take the ram of consecration, and seethe his flesh in the holy place. And Aaron and his sons shall eat the flesh of the ram, and the bread that is in the basket by the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And they shall eat those things wherewith the atonement was made, to consecrate and to sanctify them. But a stranger shall not eat thereof, because they are holy. And if aught of the flesh of the consecration or of the bread remain until morning, then you shall burn the remainder with fire, and it shall not be eaten, because it is holy. Thus shall you do unto Aaron and to his sons according to all things which I have commanded you. 7 days shall you consecrate them, and you shall offer every day a bullock for a sin offering for atonement. And you shall cleanse the altar when you have made an atonement for it, and you shall anoint it to sanctify it. 7 days shall you make an atonement for the altar, and to sanctify it, and it shall be an altar most holy, wherefore whatsoever touches that altar shall be holy. So here we see instructions on how to make the altar holy. Now this is that which you shall offer upon the altar: 2 lambs of the first year, day by day, continually. This is the Tamid offering. I personally believe that this is what, now if you read how Yeshua was crucified, he was crucified at the time of the Tamid offering, which may in fact show us that he was a Tamid offering, which would mean that we become a Tamid offering in his stead. Because if you look, you'll see in the New Testament phrases like you are to die daily. Excuse me. And if you consider things like that, maybe that's how you die daily, as a Tamid offering. Twice a day you're dying. You're crucifying your flesh. It says, take up your cross and follow me, or take up your storos, which is to be upright. So take up uprightness and follow him. Do that which is upright. And again, if we consider that these lambs are being offered twice a day, and that Yeshua was actually crucified during the time these lambs were being offered, maybe that is part of what we are to become, is a daily offering. I mean, that's what he says. You're a living sacrifice, right? You're a daily offering made to God. All right, so one lamb shall you offer in the morning, and the other lamb shall you offer at the even. And with the one lamb, a tenth deal of flour mingled with a fourth hin of beaten oil, the fourth part of hin of wine for a drink offering, and the other lamb shall thou offer even. Shall you do therefore according to the meat offering of the morning, and according to the drink offering thereof, for a sweet savor, an offering made by fire unto Jehovah. This shall be a continual burnt offering throughout your generations at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before Jehovah, where I will meet you to speak there unto you. And there I will meet with the children of Israel, and the tabernacle shall be sanctified by my glory. And I will sanctify the tabernacle congregation and the altar, and I will also sanctify both Aaron and his sons to minister to me in the priest's office. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will be their Elohim. And they shall know that I am Jehovah their Elohim, that brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, that I may dwell among them. I am Jehovah their Elohim. Consider how many times he points out that he set them free from Egypt. That's a big part of who he is. He's the one that gave them freedom. He's the one that bought them at a price. Where they had been slaves, he tried to make them kings and priests. And unfortunately, they eventually chose a king instead of walking in that role. Which is one that we're all men who are in this walk have to face sooner or later, which is the question of, can I be a king, or do I need to live as a slave? And if I choose to live as a slave, then I need to be a slave in Yeshua's household. And you'll see in Romans 1 that Paul refers to himself in this way. He is a slave of Christ, is what he says in Romans 1. He says, I, Paul, comma, a slave of Christ, comma. That's how he defines himself. And some might say, well, he means a servant. Well, yes, servant, slave, same word in Hebrew. Point being, there are rules now that govern his behavior and his responsibilities, because he does not have a lot of responsibilities that he previously had. His responsibility is now to his master. He is no longer a master. If a wife is given to him while he's serving Yeshua, then that wife belongs to Yeshua. Excuse me. If he tries to leave the household of God, he doesn't get to take that wife with him. That's one of those rules. If he decides he wants to become a permanent part of the household, he serves 7 years, pierces his ear through with an howl, and he becomes a permanent part of that household, which would make them a permanent part of the high priest household, because when Yeshua was sold to the tribe of Levi, which is what happened when he was sold for 30 pieces of silver, he actually became a part of the tribe of Levi at that time. So anyone who is a slave of his also becomes a Levite in that tribe, which is technically why it's okay that Christians don't keep the Sabbath, because Levites never were able to keep the Sabbath. Unfortunately, they don't understand that and misinterpret what it means, because they don't understand what their responsibilities are as a priest, really as slaves to the priesthood. Levites are really the slaves of the priest, because from the beginning, Jehovah said, I'll take the firstborn. Everything that opens the matrix belongs to me. The firstborn is his. So instead of taking the firstborn of every tribe, he took the entire tribe of Levi in lieu of the firstborn and let the firstborn be redeemed. Now, I assume that the firstborn is the actual quote-unquote priesthood of Melchizedek, so that one day the Levitical tribe will no longer have to be an entire tribe of priests. No more than any other tribe would be a tribe of priests. Because the deal from the original was, I will make you and the phrase he uses is a kingdom of priests. That's a royal priesthood. Chapter 30. And you shall make an altar to burn incense upon, of shittim wood shall you make it. A cubit shall be the length thereof, and a cubit shall be the breadth thereof. foursquare it shall be, and 2 cubits shall be the height thereof, and the horns thereof shall be the same. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, the top thereof, and the sides thereof, round about the horns thereof. And you shall make unto it a crown of gold around about. And 2 gold rings shall you make in the corner of the crown of the 2 corners thereof, and upon the 2 sides of this shall be make it, that it shall be for places for staves to bear it withal. And you shall make the staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold. Remember, this thing had to be transported regularly. So whenever the cloud would move, Israel needed to box up everything and move. And then when it settled, that's where they needed to build the tabernacle at again. And you shall put it before the veil, that it is by the ark of testimony, before the mercy seat that is over the testimony, where I will meet with you. And Aaron shall burn thereupon sweet incense every morning. When he dresseth the lamps, he shall burn incense upon it. And when Aharon lighteth the lamp at even, he shall burn incense upon it, and the perpetual incense before Jehovah throughout your generations. And you shall offer no strange incense thereof, nor burn sacrifice, nor meat offering, nor neither shall you pour drink offering therein. And Aharon shall make an atonement upon the horns once a year with the blood of the sin offering for atonements. Once in the year shall he make atonement upon it throughout your generations. It is the most holy unto Jehovah. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, When you take the sum of the children of Israel after their number, then shall they give every man a ransom for his soul unto Jehovah. When you will number them, that there will be no plague among them when you number them. This they will give every one that passeth upon them that are numbered a half shekel after the shekel of the sanctuary. A shekel is 20 gerahs, and half shekel shall be the offering unto Jehovah. We actually see this is what is later established as the temple tax. Excuse me. During the time of the Second Temple period, you'll recall in the Gospels that it says tax collectors came, but it's temple tax collectors, came to Peter and says, does your rabbi pay the tax? And it's referring to the temple tax. He says, oh, yes. And Yeshua says, does a king ask his sons to pay taxes, or does he ask strangers in the land to pay taxes? Peter replies, well, he would ask strangers to pay taxes. And Yeshua said, that's absolutely right. But so that we don't cause any trouble, fish up a fish, and you'll find the 2 drachma tax inside the fish's mouth. That's the half shekel. And that's 2 drachma would be enough to buy a half shekel, because the shekel they used was the Tyrian shekel. All right. So this is where that comes from, but that did not actually exist until, excuse me. The use of that did not actually exist until about 70 BC, when the Pharisees petitioned the Greek government to establish a by-law temple tax that Jews had to abide by, which did create a tremendous amount of wealth in Jerusalem, and did get the temple built up very big. And Alfred Edersheim talks about this in his Temple and its Ministries. But of course it caused some other problems, which might be why Yeshua referred to them as the Pharisees, that is, as people who devour widows' houses, because if a person did not pay the temple tax, then they could be prosecuted at law and have their property seized. So if a woman was too poor to pay, or if anybody was too poor to pay, they could have their possessions seized by the government. Let's see what else we got here. Another interesting thing is the last time, this was the time when they would have, this is the time when they did a census that didn't actually get anybody killed. Because later when we see David do a census, there was a great amount of death that came after that. Almost like Jehovah saying, it's none of your business how many people there are here. They're all mine. I know how many people there are. You don't need to know. So let's continue here. So pass among the number of a half shekel. This is a half shekel that's being taken up for the building of the tabernacle. Everyone that passes among them that are numbered from 20 years old above shall give an offering unto Jehovah. The rich shall not give more, the poor shall not give less than half a shekel. So this is a flat tax that's being put out. When they give an offering unto Jehovah to make an atonement for their souls, then you shall take the atonement money of the children of the children of Israel, and shall appoint it for the sacrifice of the tabernacle of the congregation, that it may be a memorial unto the children of Israel before Jehovah, to make an atonement for your souls. And Jehovah spake unto Moshe, saying, You shall make You shall also make a laver of brass, and his foot also of brass, to wash withal. That you shall put it between the tabernacle congregation and the altar, and you shall put the water therein. This is the laver of washing that we're reading about. For Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and their feet, and to do both hands and feet. And when they go into the tabernacle congregation, they shall wash with water, that they die not. And when they come near to the altar to minister, to burn offering made by fire unto Jehovah, so they shall wash their hands and their feet, that they die not. And it shall be a statute for them forever, even to him, to his seed throughout their generations. Moreover, that Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Take you also that these principal spices of pure myrrh, 500 shekels, of sweet cinnamon, half so much, even 250 shekels, and of sweet calamus, 250 shekels, and of cassie, 500 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary, and of olive oil a hin. And you shall make it an oil of a holy anointment, an anointment compound, after the art of the apothecary, and it shall be a holy anointing oil. And you shall anoint the tabernacle of the congregation therein, and the ark of the testimony. This is apothecary. It also says that is a perfumer. So the artist who works in creating good smelling things. All right. And the table and all his vessels, and the candlestick and his vessels, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all his vessels, and the laver and his foot. And you shall sanctify them, that they may be most holy. Whatsoever touches them shall be holy. And you shall anoint Aharon and his sons, and consecrate them, that they may minister unto me in the priestly office. And you shall speak unto the children of Israel, saying, This shall be a holy anointing oil unto me throughout your generations. Upon man's flesh shall it be poured, neither shall you make any other like it after the composition of it. It is holy, and it shall be holy unto you. Whosoever compoundeth anything like it, or whatsoever putteth any of it upon a stranger, shall be cut off from his people. So he says, this special stuff, just for this purpose, do not make any perfume like it. It is a very special holy purpose. Don't put it on anyone who isn't a holy person for a holy purpose. All right, and Jehovah said unto Moshe, Take unto you sweet spices, stocte, onke, and galbanum, these sweet spices with pure frankincense, of each shall there be a like weight. And you shall make it a perfume, a confection, after the art of the apothecary, tempered together, pure and holy. And you shall beat some of it very small, and put it before the testimony in the tabernacle congregation, where I will meet with you, and it shall be upon you most holy. Excuse me. And as for the perfume which you shall not make to yourselves according to the composition thereof, and it shall be upon you holy for the Lord. Whosoever shall make it like that, to smell thereof, shall even be cut off from his people. So he says, don't try to substitute, don't try to make this stuff to sell to the ladies in the courtyard. No, this is a very specific purpose, and it is very important that it stays used only in this specific purpose. Not to say that it can't be put anywhere else, but if it is, cut that person off. They're not allowed to be a part of Israel any longer. All right. There's a lot of interesting and, do I want to say archaic? No. Let me use the word arcane things happening here. Because unfortunately, since we're 3,500 years removed from this, we don't understand the cultural context of what was going on. Not to mention the fact that Moses was an 80-plus-year-old man who had spent probably 25 years as an Egyptian priest and then another 40 years as a priest in Midian. So he knew a lot of stuff about holy types of things that we just don't know about. Even most modern rabbis will tell you when you're doing the mitzvahs, you just do them because it says so, because there's no clear, rational explanation for why a lot of them exist. But I bet one day it will make sense. And we will be able to fully understand why all those things took place. And wouldn't it be amazing to find out that some of that stuff had nothing to do with what we might think it has to do with? You know, we last week I mentioned the butterfly effect. What if a lot of this stuff just has to do with that? has to do with the fact that when you put certain things in motion, or when you make people think certain thoughts or say certain phrases, somehow, somewhere, in the long run, strange things happen somewhere else. The butterfly effect, for those who don't know, is the idea that the world is so interconnected that if a butterfly flaps its wings across the world, suddenly on the other side of the world a tornado kicks up, because the little flapping of the butterfly wings disturbed what was going on in the world just enough that around the world the cause and effect loop that continued eventually caused an actual tornado to occur. And of course there's no quote-unquote proof for that, but it's one of those things that if you consider it as a possibility, then there's really no limit to why Yehovah may have actually asked people to do these things that he's asked us to do. I was watching today Evan Almighty with my family this morning, and there's a scene in there where he says, Morgan Freeman's character says, you said you wanted to change the world, well, here's how you do it. One random act of kindness at a time. And, to our modern way of viewing things, we say, oh, that sounds like a great idea. That sounds like the kind of person I want to be. And that's a good thing. But the world is full of a lot of things that are not acts of kindness. And we have to believe that everything is somehow connected back to Yehovah and what he is allowing to happen, or even causing to happen in this world. For we who want to be his priesthood, we have responsibilities and duties that we might refer to as being good, but in fact we should really just call our duties, because we really don't understand the difference between what is good and what is bad, or what is good and what is evil. That is beyond our understanding. I believe that's why Yeshua said, when they said to him, Rabbi, good Rabbi, how do I do such? He says, why do you call me good? There's only one that is good. And I believe he means that in a philosophical sense of saying, only Yehovah really understands what the good is. We as humans understand our needs and our desires and our wants, and we can understand instructions, but we do not know what good and bad are. And for thousands of years, philosophers have debated trying to come to a full understanding, and probably one of the most systematic and thorough attempts at explaining morality came from Immanuel Kant. He had to literally write 2 books before he could write his ethics book, because he was trying to create an epistemology based on a priori or a posteriori reasoning to understand what ethics actually were. Unfortunately, there were still some things he could not account for. For instance, could you prove that murder was wrong? Logically, he couldn't do it. So he called it, he said that if a murder took place, then it would bring upon the world, or the land that it happened, a blood guilt, which is exactly what the Bible says, by the way. A blood guilt comes upon the land when someone is murdered there. And until the murderer is removed or killed, it hangs over the whole place. And we'll see later, there's some rules where if a person is found dead and nobody knows what happened to him, they have to count from the closest city and bring a bull offering and break his neck and say, look, we had nothing to do with this man dying. God, please forgive us. If we could have stopped it, we would have. If we could punish the guy, we will. But we have no idea who did this. And in that case, they still have to make an offering because that blood guilt is on the land. And again, that's just why I say we really don't understand what good and evil are. We just know what we should do. And we have to trust that Yehovah knows. All right, so let's read in Ezekiel. We're going to read Ezekiel 10 to 27. And you probably noticed something interesting. 97 times in the book of Ezekiel, Yehovah refers to him as Son of Man. So remember that when you're reading Yeshua and he talks about the Son of Man. He may be talking about Ezekiel. And there's one place where he's talking to the Pharisees and getting on to them for being bad shepherds who feed upon the flock instead of feeding the flock. And that's actually straight out of Ezekiel, who is called the Son of Man. So just something interesting you might want to check out. All right, this is 43:10. You, O Son of Man, show the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. And if they be ashamed of all that they have done, show them form of the house, and of the fashion thereof, and of the goings out thereof, and of the comings in thereof, and of all the forms thereof, and all the ordinances thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the laws thereof, and to write it in their sight, that they may keep the whole form thereof, and all the ordinances thereof to do them. This is the law of the house. Upon the top of the mountain, the whole limit thereof, round about, shall be most holy. Behold, this is the law of the house. And these are the measures of the altar after the cubits. The cubit is a cubit and a handbreadth. Cubit, handbreadth. Even the bottom shall be a cubit, and the breadth a cubit, and the border thereof by the edge thereof round all about shall be the span. And this shall be the higher place of the altar. And from the bottom upon the ground even to the lower settling shall be 2 cubits, and the breadth 1 cubit, and from the lesser settle even to the greater shall be 4 cubits, and the breadth 1 cubit. And the altar shall be 4 cubits, and from the altar upward shall be 4 horns. And the altar shall be 12 cubits long, 12 broad, square in the 4 corners. So here we see the squared altar again. By the way, if you know anything about the Masonic order, which is big on the temple, everything's built on the set square. That's why cities are built on squares that are in the Western world, because they influence the Masonic order on architecture. You may have heard the term getting square meals a day, or getting a square deal from somebody, or even in the 1950s referring to a person who does not do things that are bad as a square. It's all Masonic language. That's where that comes from. That's why you see so much about this in their language, squares, because certain things are important that they be squared in the temple. And the settle shall be 14 cubits long and 14 broad, and the 4 squares thereof, and the border there shall be a half cubit, and the bottom thereof shall be a half cubit, and his stairs shall look towards the east. And he said unto me, Son of man, thus says Jehovah Elohim, these are the ordinances of the altar in the day when they shall make it, to offer burnt offerings thereupon, and to sprinkle blood therein. And you shall give to the priests and Levites, that they may be of the seed of Zadok, which approach unto me to minister unto me, says Jehovah Elohim, a young bullock for a sin offering. And they shall take of the blood thereof, and put it on the 4 horns, and the 4 corners to settle upon the border and round about. Thus shall you cleanse and purge it. You shall take the bullock also of the sin offering, and he shall burn it in the appointed place of the house, without the sanctuary. And on the 2nd day you shall offer a kid of the goats without blemish for a sin offering, and you shall cleanse the altar as they did cleanse it with the bullock. When you have made an end of cleansing it, you shall offer a young bullock without blemish, and a ram out of the flock without blemish, and you shall offer them before Jehovah, and the priest shall cast salt upon them, and shall offer them up for a burnt offering. Remember, nothing without salt, right? Got to make your offerings with salt. 7 days shall you prepare every day a goat for a sin offering. They shall also prepare a young bullock and a ram out of the flock without blemish. 7 days shall they purge the altar and purify it, and they shall consecrate themselves. And when these days are expired, it shall be that upon the 8th day and so forward, the priest shall make your burnt offerings upon the altar, your peace offerings, and I will accept you, says Jehovah Elohim. Now, there's a famous bit that we get out of the scripture that says that when you make an offering, you make salt. You bring salt with your offering. You make salt with an offering. We should take this and think about it when Yeshua mentions the salt. You know, if a salt loses its savoriness, in other words, that's the flavor of saltiness, then it's not good for anything. You might as well just throw it out, because at the point that salt is no longer salty, it's just dirt at that point. So if it's dirt, then it's not to be mixed with an offering. Only salt can be mixed in an offering. So when he says, you're the salt of the earth, he's saying, you're the kind of stuff that has to be thrown onto every offering before it can even be altered, before it can be offered, sorry. And we just saw that here the priests are salting the offerings before they're being made. You remember, salt in the ancient world was very, very, very important. You will die if you do not eat enough salt. Salt allows your electroconnectivity in your body to continue. The individual cellular nerve connections you have require electrolytes, which is salt. Salt's an electrolyte, to actually allow the electroconductivity between the neurons as they fire and communicate with each other. Basically, they send a chemical signal, and then right at the end, there's a little electrical signal that goes through and continues chemically to the next one. So if you ain't got salt, you're literally going to die, which is why it was so important in the ancient world. In fact, the term salary, which we still use today, comes straight from the word salt. Salivation in your mouth. The salary, a salute, when you give a salute. A soldier was paid in a salary. Soldiers in the Roman army were paid with salt. That's how that's their salary they received in salt, because it was very valuable and could be traded very readily. It's no surprise that they'd take over the Dead Sea area, because Dead Sea's just packed full of salt. It's a great place to. You would think that it would be dead and worthless, but no, all that salt laying around. That's a salt mine. That's like a gold mine back in the old days, back before we had the kind of mining equipment we got these days, where we can strip mine a whole mountain in a matter of months. Back then, if you could find salt laying around, you found gold basically laying around. You could pay off a lot of folks with that. All right, let's move on to the Brit Hadashah, or the New Testament, and we're going to be reading from the book of Romans. This is the last of the books written by Paul. Some say he died in Rome. Some say he was set free. I don't know which. For certain, and I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. I'm just going to say it's held that this is the last epistle that he had written. This is while he was in captivity, waiting for his appointment to see Caesar. And he waited for 2 years while he, if you recall, he was in Jerusalem. He brought Greek men there and did the number 6 Nazirite vow with them. Some men there said, wait, these men are Greek, they're not Israelites, why do you have them in here? And a big hubbub arose in the book of Acts. You can read it in Acts. And what happens is that Paul then gets up and he's like, look, everybody. He speaks to them in Hebrew. It specifically says he speaks Hebrew. He speaks Hebrew to them. He says, look, everybody, I'm a Israelite. I'm a Pharisee of the Pharisees. These men are clean. They're with me. I've done what we needed to be done to get them here to do this. And there was just a giant uproar. The Roman soldiers came out because the fortress Antonia was right over the courtyard of the temple. So the Roman soldiers were always watching the courtyard of Antonia, because the Jews were known for being, any little thing could set them off. So the Roman centurion stayed there and watched them. So when this thing kicks off with this big controversy, the Roman soldiers are down there in a heartbeat, which is why you need to wonder, how in the world was Yeshua able to overturn the tables of money changers, chase people with a whip, and, cause a ruckus? How did he do this? And the Roman soldiers didn't run out and seize him. That should make you say, he's definitely got somebody's backing him, whether it be Yehovah or even Pontius Pilate or even Herod at the time. And there's a documentary I watched not too long ago that literally said that he was part of a political movement that was going on at the time, and that Herod and Pontius Pilate were backing him, and that is why the Roman soldiers did not grab him when he flipped over the tables. Paul did not get the same privilege. Paul got out there, the Roman soldier snatched him up, and he's like, whoa, 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 y'all, I'm a Roman. I'm appealed to Caesar. Don't leave me with these Jews. I appeal to Caesar. And then at the point that the Romans confirmed he was actually a Roman, they said, all right, well, we'll keep you under wraps and we'll get you to Caesar. It was years later that they actually finally got him out over to Rome to sit and wait. This is where he goes through his shipwreck, where he gets bit by the snake and he throws the snake away, and the guy's like, oh, you must be a god. You were bit by a poisonous snake and didn't die. All that stuff's in the book of Acts. It's actually pretty interesting. Take time to read it sometime if you haven't before. Lots of stuff happens in Acts that helps explain a lot of the troubles and the controversy that was going on, because this is not, from Yeshua to today, is not one seamless, unfrayed line that makes perfect sense. There was arguments and disagreements. Paul and Timothy and Barnabas and Silas, everybody was fighting about everything. Because when you get two Jews together, you're going to get 30 opinions. And it's no different then. They were arguing about all kind of stuff. Paul and Peter had a falling out over Peter's behavior when he was around Pharisees. And Paul was like, look, you either need to be a Jew, or you need to be this new thing that we are. You're going to be an old school Pharisee, or you're going to be this new thing that we're trying to be. A lot of trouble, different times. Sometimes you can even see Paul writing, it even sounds like he's a loner, like he's had to go it alone, like he feels like he's alone, the lone gunman out there, trying to continue the gospel to the Gentiles, and almost like he's disconnected from a lot of stuff in his past. All right, so let's continue. Let's continue. Let's read in the gospel. I shouldn't say gospel. Let's read in the epistle to the Romans. When we say epistle, that means a letter. These are the letters from Paul. And please remember, when you're reading Paul, that Paul is a Pharisee of the Pharisees. These are his own words testifying of himself. He said, I am a Pharisee of the Pharisees. He is not a he's not a Christian pastor. He's not a Hellenistic Jew. He's not a Gnostic. Yeah, I'm naming all these different. He's not a Stoic. He is a Pharisee. He is of the Fardim. Is that the word? The set apart ones. He is a part of a religious movement started around the time of the Babylonian captivity, which focused on training up everybody in Israel to be the royal priesthood. Okay, they're the set apart ones. That's what they call themselves. They would not communicate. They would not hang around common people, even the Jews. If you were a Jew, but you were a common person who did things that common folks did, if you were a person that lived out in the country, they typically would not associate with you because they considered you ignorant. And if you were ignorant, then you needed to come to the synagogue and they would teach you. And if you discipled yourself under one of them, then they would start to accept you. But you got to understand, sometimes people read the Bible, particularly the New Testament, and they just think that everything makes perfect sense and adds up. But you got to remember, Paul was growing and changing the whole time he was writing these letters. Timothy was growing and changing. Barnabas was growing and changing. All these people are people, and they are writing their opinions and their understanding of what they feel like God wants for them. We see a lot of that in the life we live today. I mean, it's no different now. Plenty of people are, arguing about, what's the right way to pronounce God's name. And this is one that I see way too much. Are black people the real Israelites, and should they be given Israel and all the white people driven? Of course, that's ridiculous, but at the same time, that's the kind of nonsense that people are arguing about. People were arguing about nonsense back here too. Remember, you recall when we read it, I think 2 Torah portions ago, people are bringing to him the controversy saying the Greek widows are not receiving the same share that the Jewish widows are receiving. And the Greeks were very offended by that, who were like, look, we're part of the Commonwealth of Israel. Why aren't our widows receiving, the charity like your widows are receiving? We're supposed to all be one now. And Peter basically was like, I don't even have time to deal with this nonsense. I'm going to pick 7 men who I can trust, who are honest men, who are God-fearing, and put them in charge of this problem and have it fixed. We need to worry about ministry. We got to worry about praying. We got to worry about teaching people what this word is. But, people are people, and they like drama, so it's just what you got to deal with. All right, let's read Romans 12. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim, that you present your bodies as this is wonderful, as a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto Elohim, which is your reasonable service. See, he said it's your reasonable service because you're a tamid offering. You're a daily offering made to God. He just said that you present your bodies a sacrifice, a living sacrifice. Okay? And be not conformed to this world, but be you transformed by the renewing of your mind, or your heart, whichever way you want to say it, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and the perfect will of Elohim. Okay, so again, they're going to know you by your actions. How do you know a tree? You know a tree by its fruit. If you do what has been instructed to you, then they will know who your master is. All he's saying is this is just common sense, is all he's saying to you. For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think soberly according to Elohim, according to as Elohim hath dealt to every man the measure of his faith. Okay? For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, so we, being many, are one body in Christ, every one members of another. Okay, so this is the idea of being echad. He's trying to explain that they are echad. He's like, look, and this is, I'll give you some modern biology. Your body is made of billions and billions of cells. Every one of those cells contains your genetic information. Every one of those cells functions in its own way, doing its own thing. Every nerve cell, every white blood cell, every red blood cell, I don't know, do red blood cells contain the genetic code? I don't know. Point being, every cell is doing its own thing. Every piece of you. Every little tiny microscopic piece is doing its own thing all the time, living its own life, being what it is. Add every one of those together, and it's you. So all of those cells are echad as you. Okay? So we're the cells that make up the body of Christ. Christ told you, I and the Father are echad. So if you and Christ are echad, by the transitive property, you and the Father are echad. Okay? Having then gifts differing according to grace that is given to us, whether it be prophecy, then let us prophesy according to the proportion of our faith. He said, so basically he's saying, look, everybody ain't the same. If everybody was doing the same thing all the time, what would grandmama say? If everybody in the chorus sang the same note, there'd be no harmony, right? So don't sweat it when somebody comes by and for some reason, they don't even know why, but when they touch people and pray for them, they get healed. But you touch people and pray for them, they don't get healed. Don't worry. There may be somebody somewhere that is going to get healed when you pray for them. Or it's just not the gift that's yours. And they'll be like, but it says that when you do it, then these gifts will follow them. They'll heal. Yes, some of them will. But not everybody. It's okay. You don't have to be Superman. Just be who you are and follow the instructions that were given to you. Our ministry, let us wait on our ministering, or he that teaches on teaching. So if your gift is to teach, well, then you teach people. Tell them what you can tell them. If your gift is to minister to people, and that means, to console them and to instruct them in the ways of Jehovah and to help them see more clearly how he's at work in their lives, then do that, Or he that exhorts, let him exhort. He that gives, let him do with simplicity. So if you're the kind of person that just builds other people up and that's just what you're good at, when you come into a room and people are glad to see you, let them be glad to see you and deliver the word of Jehovah to them and build them up with it. And if you're the kind of person that don't say a lot but has got a body and can work, then put your body to work. Do what you can do. He let him give in simplicity. He that rules, let him rule with diligence. He that shows mercy, let it be with cheerfulness. In other words, don't be mad when you got to show people mercy. Be glad you can do it too. Let love be without dissimulation. We're going to have to look up that word. See what word they transfer. Because remember, love is agape. That's a contractual love. The kind of love you have with God. It's a marriage contract kind of love. He says, let it not be, that's chapter 12, verse 9. Let love be without dissimulation. He's probably going to say don't favor anybody over anybody else, but let's make sure. That is anipokritos. anupakretos. In the Strong's definition, as a negative article, the presumed derivative, undissembled, sincere, without dissimulation, without hypocrisy. Don't fake it. So when you commit your love to the people around you, don't fake it. Just really do it, because it's not about who they are; it's about who you are. It doesn't matter if they're crappy. It doesn't matter if you've caught them in a lie. It doesn't matter if they're not doing what's right. You do what's right. They'll either be corrected, or two people will catch them doing it at the same time, and they're going to be disciplined, and then they're going to be removed. Okay? Don't worry. You don't have to hate people because they don't do what's right. You give them a chance to change. You help them change. If they refuse to change, you get rid of them. That's the way it works. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. So if you see them doing the right thing, praise them for doing what's right. See them doing the wrong thing, make sure they know that don't belong. Be kindly affectionate, affection to one another with brotherly love, and honor, preferring one another. So let's see, what does he mean when he says preferring? Let's see what that word is. Preferring is proegomai. Proegomi. To lead the way for others. All right, to show deference. To go before them, to show the way. All right, so there's that do unto others as you would have them do unto you lesson, which says when you're with others, show them how to behave. Show them the right way to do things. Be a living sacrifice. Be an example. Not slothful in business, reverent in spirit, serving Yehovah. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer. All right, so let's read these words. Rejoicing in Cairo, which is to rejoice, right? In hope, elpis. Patient, hypomeno. In tribulations, that's the ellipsis. That means the narrowing way. So if somebody says that you're going to go through tribulation, tribulation literally means a narrow path. So when Yeshua says, the broad is the way to destruction, narrow is the path to salvation, that means you must go through tribulation. You must walk a very narrow path, and that in itself is tribulation, because the narrowing path means that you're walking somewhere and the walls are getting closer and closer and closer together until you have no room to wiggle. You can't wiggle left or right. You simply must do exactly what you've been instructed to do. So needless to say, as you continue into tribulation, it doesn't mean suffering and getting, eaten by lions, even though that did happen to some people. Hope that that's not what it means for you. But it does mean you must follow his instructions very completely and very accurately, or you will become stuck, or you will find out who's waiting, above or on the other side of the guardrail. Let's put it that way. If there's a guardrail on both sides of you and a tiny little walkway, stick on the walkway, because outside is where the wild animals, the beasts of the field are. You don't want to go there. All right. He that exhorteth, let him exhort. All right, let's see. And be kindly affectionate one another, brotherly love, honoring and preferring one another, not slothful in business, fervent in the spirit, serving Yehovah. Let's see what they mean when he says fervent. He probably means burning with a fire, but let's see what word is fervent there. Zeo. To boil with heat, to be hot. There you go. To be burning a fire, exactly. Getting hot with it. All right, let's see. Rejoice in hope, patient tribulation, continuing instant in prayer. Let's see what they mean when he says instant in prayer. It probably means to pray without ceasing. But let's see. Proskartereo. So toward something. Proskartereo. To adhere to one, to be adherent to something. Strong, to be earnest towards, it means honest towards, to persevere. To be constantly diligent, or to attend studiously all exercise of person. To adhere closely to attend to. And you've got to remember that prayer does not mean davening. We're not talking about, oh, God, I leave you. That's not prayer. Prayer is prosikomai. That means to exchange wishes with God. So think of that's how you can pray continuously, because it doesn't mean close your eyes, bow your head, and humble yourself. It means give up what you want and take what He wants. That is what prayer is. It is to exchange who you are for who He is. Think of it that way. It's almost saying, you know what, Yehovah, just dig me out of my own body and just you come climb inside it and just take over. Because that's exactly what He said He'd do, by the way. He said, I'll put my word as frontlets between your eyes. This is your cerebral cortex. This is the part of your brain where you do your conscious thinking. So He says, take my word and put it on your conscious thinker and let that be what it thinks about. Make your hands, write my word on your hands, make your hands be my hands, basically. What it boils down to is Him basically making it clear to us that we actually don't do anything good. Let that sink in. We humans do nothing that is good. Okay? Now let me explain what I mean when I say that. Anything good that you did was Him operating through you. Okay? This is the biggest kick in the pride of man that I can give you. And let me tell you, 2 weeks ago, when I got these foster kids, and I sat in the shower and I cried because I knew that the only reason they were here was because of Him and not because of me. I did nothing good. I do nothing good. It is what He does through me that is good. I have acted in accordance with His instructions. That is what is good. That means I have allowed Him to control me. Thereby that is good. Okay? You understand? I have made myself His puppet. And I know that sounds odd, but that is the death of my own pride. Because what are the three things that men desire? The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. When you can give up on even the pride of saying, I'm a good man, I did this, I did that. When you could just say, I'm not good, He's good. That's when you're there, when you can start doing that. Okay. Let's see, what we got here? Distributing to the necessities of the saints, given to hospitality. No surprise there. Hospitality is extremely important in the Middle East in general. I mean, at this time, remember, constantly Yehovah is saying, you were slaves in Egypt. Be kind to strangers. You were strangers in Egypt. Be kind to strangers. Hospitality is extremely important. Hospitality, if a man is hospitable, it shows he knows where he came from. Because we were all strangers in strangers in Egypt while we were slaves. And it also says distributing to the necessity of the saints. And we see in another place, I think it's in Corinthians, he says if a brother has need and you need to give it to him. And that's not something new. That's pretty much the same thing that's written in the Torah, which is if a brother needs to borrow from you, let him borrow from you. You know, and you hold him, but at the same time, you can't loan to him at an interest rate, and if he gets it at the Shemitah, the debt is forgiven anyways. So, you know, you got to ask yourself, how do you loan anybody anything and actually get paid back for it? Well, it'd be pretty difficult in that world. So it's best to think of any gift you give anybody as a gift. Don't think of it as a loan. Excuse me, because there's plenty of way for them to get out of paying it. So just get used to providing for the needs of the family of God, and then let Yehovah provide for your needs. That's pretty much what it boils down to. Bless them which persecute you. Bless and curse not. So let's see what the word persecute means. Bless them that persecute you. This almost sounds like he's working off the Beatitudes here, right? Persecution is What word have they said is dioko? All right. Let's see what that means. Dioko. Oh, sorry, dioko. So this is a person who persecutes you, a prolonged, to flee, to pursue, by implication, to follow, to ensue, given to persecution, to press forward. Let's see where it's used. Blessed are those which persecute you. That's right out of Matthew 5. Bless those that persecute. This is to be pursued, right? To make, to run or flee, to put to flight, to drive away, to run swiftly in order to catch a person or thing to run after. Figuratively, one who runs a race. Well, you got to ask yourself, who would have been persecuting these people that Paul is writing to? It's not really the Roman government. It didn't get too bad with the Roman government until the cult of the emperor emerged, because the cult of the emperor required that people regard the emperor as a god. And when you regarded the emperor as a god, you had to sacrifice. All it was, you had to take a little bit of incense and throw it on a fire in a public temple and say, I acknowledge that the emperor is God, and you're done. But Christians would not do that, and that's why they ended up a lot of times getting thrown to the lions. That was all the product of the pride of the emperors. At this time, the people who would have been persecuted would have been the Jewish authorities, because they had instructed Peter not to teach this anymore. So now by Peter and Paul teaching this cult of Yeshua, they were violating the law the Sanhedrin had set down as being the law. And when you violate the judge, it's a death penalty. That's out of the Torah. We hadn't got there yet. Or maybe we did. I think we did read it, actually. I think it was 2 Torah portions ago. If you violate the instruction of a judge, then it's a death penalty for you. And that's probably who he's talking about when he says, pray for them. Don't curse them. Bless them, don't curse them. Because they're your family. They're the family of God. And they're doing what the Torah has instructed. Because the Torah instructs them, if somebody disobeys the judge, you go get them. You get them. And in fact, they say if a whole city turns against God, destroy the city. They really are. It's such a hard place to judge. I imagine for Peter, it's probably one of the hardest things he ever did, saying no to the judge. When the judge said, here's what we say, and Peter said, it is better that we obey God and not men. And that would have been him publicly declaring that he disagreed with what the judges had said. That's a death penalty. And Peter walked into it and said, I will endure the penalty that this requires. Of course, it was never the Jews that actually killed him, I don't think. But the Roman government did end up crucifying him in Rome. Or at least that's the tradition the Catholic Church teaches. I don't know the extent of it. It's in Fox's Book of Martyrs, too, if you'd like to read that. Or you can listen to it on YouTube. All right, let's see here. Given to hospitality, do not curse them. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that do weep. Sounds great. Be of the same mind one towards one another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Okay. So, when he says mind high things, he is talking about complex and crazy-ish spiritual questions, which people are talking about all the time. Do we go to heaven, or do we wait? Do we wait for the New Jerusalem to come and then we're resurrected? What do angels look like? Are angels really just the stars, or are angels really physical beings? The Malachim, are they really physical things? Or are the earth angels actually people who are messengers of God, like prophets who were sent to instruct? There's all these questions that you can't get a definitive answer, because nobody knows these things definitively, because they require 2 witnesses to be known for sure. So he's saying, don't waste your time talking to people, especially people who don't know nothing about what the Torah says about these things, because they don't matter. They're not the important things. The important things are what is in the Torah, and the way he describes them. He says here, condescend, that means come down to the level of those of low estate. So these are the people who the Pharisees would not have wanted to have anything to do with. These are the people who are the ignorant, the uneducated, the illiterate. He says, so go down and talk to them. And be not wise in your own conceits. So it's like, don't talk to them about the things that you are interested in jabbering about because you're trying to prove that you figured out something nobody else figured out. Just skip all that. Talk to them about what's in the Torah, because that's what they actually need to know. And if they're an illiterate person, they can't read it. If they don't speak Hebrew or Aramaic, if they go to the synagogue, they're probably not going to understand what's being said. Unless it's a Western synagogue, maybe in Alexandria where they might have been speaking in Greek. But the Torah still would have been read in Hebrew. It just depends on what the lingua franca of the group you were among is. But basically he's saying, take care of these people. These are God's children, right? You got to get off your high horse and get down there in the mud with them and lift them up so they can get up and then pick other people up out of the mud. Be of the same mind, right? With one another. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. So don't look for revenge. It's not yours. Don't put your hand to it. It's not going to do you any good trying to mess with it. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. So if you will, remember, there are people judging you all the time, whether you know it or not. If you'll walk upright and honestly before them, then they'll see you as an upright and honest person. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to like you. It just means that they'll know that that's what you are. If it be possible, as much as lies in you, live peaceably with all men. So it's like, do your best to live at peace with all men. That means the pagans and everybody else. Just try to be a peaceable person with them. Don't engage in hostility with people who disagree with you or whom you may disagree with. You might say, well, if somebody says that, abortion clinics should be able to abort all the babies they want, women should be able to have free abortions and all this other kind of stuff, and you would be like, no, I don't agree with that. I'm going to vote against that when I get the chance. I'm not going to blow up an abortion clinic and kill a bunch of people. That's not what you do. Okay? You have to be at peace with those people, which means, yes, it's terrible what some people do, but that doesn't mean you have to do what they do, and that certainly does not mean you need to be a terrible person in the process of trying to take revenge on these people or whatever it is you think you're going to do. So Paul's giving them real good advice on how to be good Roman citizens, because he knows, number one, they need to learn to be good Israelites, and if they're good Israelites, they'll be able to be good Roman citizens too. Okay? So the last thing you want is to get the Roman government involved in what you're doing, which is why he says to them in Corinthians, he's like, look, you guys are going to be, you guys have got to be able to handle your problems between one another, one to one, or bring two as a witness if you got to, or take it before the whole congregation if you got a problem. Because as soon as you guys bring in an outside judge, you're bound by your obedience to Yehovah that you must obey a judge, but you're also bound by the Roman government, because if you don't do what that judge says, the Romans will come and get you. And it won't be a matter of being forgiven. It's just going to be, you're going to pay the price. All right. Let's see. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. And that's Deuteronomy 32:35. So again, here we're seeing there is, and this is hard for me too, there is a necessity that we be people who are peaceful. Like, for instance, if someone, like I was recently wrongfully accused, and it ate me up. Still eat me up a little bit. I'm still mad about it. And I could, at law, take a person to court and say, look, you have committed slander. You have cost me business. I want you to pay for what you've done, and I want recompense and restitution for what you've done. I'm within my legal rights to do that. Now I have to ask myself the question, is it the right thing for me to do? The person who did it, I don't know if they're a person who considers themselves a part of Israel. Should I forgive them just like I would, or, communicate with them like I would a brother in Israel? I don't know. Right now I haven't done anything yet. But reading these words, it seems to insist that if I really trust Yehovah, he will avenge me. And I've seen him do it. I'll tell you what, as strange as it was, there was a business that I felt greatly disrespected my family. And I even tried to do some legal stuff affecting change. They offered me virtually nothing, and then eventually when I said, all right, I'll accept it, they refused and withdrew what they said they would give. And I said, well, my goodness, I didn't know what to do. I just separated myself from them. 2 years later, that business was burnt to the ground in a gigantic fire that burnt an entire city to the ground. And I actually was able to get on YouTube and watch it burn to the ground. And the whole time I was thinking, well, there's justice served. I hope nobody was hurt, mind you. And I hope and pray that nobody was hurt. But at the same time, I was like, well, if I'll just let Yehovah handle his business, he will revenge. He will repay. And I really do think he did in that sense. All right. Therefore, if my enemy hungers, I should feed him. If he thirsts, I should give him drink. For in so doing, you shall heap hot coals of fire upon his head. Do not overcome evil, but overcome evil with good. So I guess that answered my question. I need to let Yehovah handle his business and do what he does, and not be evil. The one thing I did say to the group that I have been wrongfully accused by, I said, look, I got some foster children in my home taken care of, so I can't deal with you right now. I need some time to take care of getting this settled up. So in that sense, I did let them know that I was doing good, and we'll see what happens. Chapter 13. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of Elohim. The powers that be are ordained of God. Now, this is the question of is a Christian bound to, is a person who is a student of the Torah, student of Moses, student of Yeshua, bound to keep whatever law a government of a country he is in proclaims? That's a mixed bag, right? Because if the government's asking you to do something that is against God, are you supposed to do it, or are you not supposed to do it? Let every soul be subject to the higher powers, for there is no power higher than God. And he may literally be referring to the Sanhedrin here, but the Sanhedrin is already declared, you cannot preach Yeshua as the Messiah, which he is doing. So he must not be referring to the Sanhedrin. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinances of Elohim, that they resist, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but are a terror to evil. Why then would you be afraid of that power? Do that which is good, and you shall be a praise to the same. So he's saying basically, if you do the instructions Yeshua and Yehovah have given you, the leaders in the government of the country you're in will be glad to have you, because you'll be a good citizen. You'll be the kind of person who isn't a handful, who isn't going to have to be locked up in jail, who isn't going to have their stuff taken from them, who they're not going to have to send soldiers after. You're not going to cause her about riots and rebellions and all that stuff. You're going to mind your business and focus on what your Elohim wants from you, right? For he is the minister of God to you for good. But if you do that which is evil, be afraid, for he bears not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of Elohim, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that does evil. So he says, if a government is doing what they're supposed to do, then they're going to bring the hammer down on that which is evil. They're not going to do it on that which is good, because they're glad to have that which is good. That which is good is not a problem. It's not trouble. People that are evil are trouble. Wherefore you must need be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay you tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Now you got to wonder, is he telling you need to pay your taxes? Kind of sounds like he's saying, pay the tribute. Let's see what the word tribute is. Therefore pay you the tribute also. 6. This is 13:6. And I'm using the Blue Letter Bible to help me bring up these words quickly. Tribute, phoros. Phoros. Tribute, especially the annual tax levied upon houses, lands, and persons. Generally a toll tax on goods, a tribute. So, he is saying pay your taxes. Render therefore to all their dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due. Custom to whom custom. Fear to whom fear. Honor to whom honor. For this you shall not commit adultery. You shall not kill. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore love is the fulfilling of all the law. And that knowing the time, that now is a high time, it is to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we first believed. The night is far from spent, the day is at hand. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. So he's saying, look, we can't keep living in the dark. We can't keep living like people who are an oppressed, crushed people. We have to start living like people who are out there in the light doing the work of Jehovah. In the seeing of the people around us, right? And this is something the Pharisees had a real problem with, because they didn't like even being around people who weren't like them. So it was very hard for people who were outside to come to understand why or what being set apart to Jehovah meant, because they acted like everybody that wasn't them was unclean. So they wouldn't have anything to do with it. So he's literally saying we can't be that way. We have to be out there in the public where the public can see us. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting or drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife or in envy. But you put on Yeshua the Messiah, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. So he's saying, and that's the end of the Torah reading, he says, do not satisfy the lust of your flesh. That's lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. But instead, put on Christ. That is to say, gut yourself out of your own body and just throw that away. Throw the person you were away. And let him and his teachings dwell in you. And when you let him dwell in you, then you let Yehovah dwell in you. That's when the quote-unquote Holy Spirit is really dwelling within you. When you have given up on who you were, given up on your pride, given up on your lusts, given up on you getting anything out of the deal. The only thing you get out of the deal is exhaustion. Okay? But in that exhaustion, he will give you the strength to carry on. Okay? That means even though the only thing you're really going to feel at the end of the day is the tiredness from what happened. Because you really can't even claim the fulfillment that it gives you. Because really that is his glory. And you have to give him that glory. The glory that you get to share in as a servant of the high priest is you get to eat from the table of the high priest. Okay? He's going to give you your daily bread. He's going to give you the money you need. He's going to give you the clothing you need. He's going to give you the house you need. He's going to give you everything that you need to do his works. That means some of us are going to be stupid rich and be able to do all kind of things with tons of money. Some of us are going to be right at the borderline all the time. Never under it. But we're going to walk that tightrope of having just enough to get by all the time. Never being in calamity. Never being without. And always having just what we need. Some of us are going to feel that all the time too. But at the end of the day, if you strip away all your pride, all your lusts, all your desires, that's all you could ever ask for in life. Is to have the food and the safety that you need to survive. That's the minimum of life. And he'll make sure you always have that. You'll never go below that mark. As long as you obey him and continue in his ways and allow him to live within you. Okay? Here we go again. A perpetual, continual sacrifice is what you are. You are a Tamid offering, which we read about today. You are the thing that gets sanctified. You are the thing that sanctifies things. If you will do what you have been instructed, if you will live a holy life, when I say holy, I mean throw you away, bring him and his teachings in, and put them in the place of what you were. Ignore all your conclusions, all the things you thought before. Come to him like children. How do children learn? Kindergarten level. You start at the bottom and you work your way up from there. Okay? Let him come into your life. Learn the basics. Learn the Torah. Continue in the teachings. Don't worry. Yes, you want to be a priest? Absolutely. That's wonderful. You don't have to do the priestly duty all the time. There's plenty of other priests to do the duty. If anything, your duty as a priest is to minister to the people. So minister to the people. Lift them up. Show them God work in their lives. Help them take that step. Nurture their faith. Don't destroy their faith. Nurture their faith. What is faith? Faith is the ability to believe in something that is unseen. But it is only unseen unto the point that you believe in it. That is to say, some people will never be able to have faith because they have minds that are so rigidly scientific that they cannot believe in what they do not see. Even though science will tell you, there is so much out there that your eyes cannot see, that your ears cannot hear, that your tongue cannot taste, that your hands cannot touch. There's so much out there in the world of science. It's beyond the human perception, and we require special, sophisticated instruments to even notice. But those people who can only believe what they see with their eyes, they'll never be able to have faith. When you have faith, when you take that, all you have to take is the first step. What did Abraham do? Why was Abraham considered righteous? Because of his faith. Yehovah said to him, I'm going to give you a land. Leave the land of your fathers. Leave this place behind. Leave the Ur of the Chaldees. That's where he's from. He's from Babylon. Leave all that behind. I'm going to give you something out there in that horizon, in that land you don't know. And Abraham said, I don't know you. I don't know nothing about that land, but I'll believe you. I'll believe you. And he did, and he left. And once he left, he saw Yehovah working in his life constantly. But he had to take that first step. It's the same step Yehovah offers every one of us. If you'll give him the chance to be the God of your life, you will see him at work in your life. But you have to give him the chance first. Just give him a chance. If he don't come through, throw him out. That's fair. I'm not going to tell you that's not fair. If you give him the chance to be the Elohim of your life, and he does not show up and show out, then you know what? Forget him. Do something else. Live your life like you want to live it. That's your choice. I'm not going to tell you that that's a bad idea. But I'm also going to tell you that if you will give him the chance, he will show up and he will show out. And your life will become a new and changed life. And you'll become a new and changed person. And maybe for the first time in your life, you'll realize that you're not the center of the world. And at the same time, you are. And as contradictory as that might sound, you're not the center of the world because he is what everything comes from. But he has to be able, you have to allow him to dwell in you so that you can become a part of being the real center of the world. As strange as that sounds, I know it sounds weird. It's very yin yang. It's very illogical because logic is A cannot be A and not A simultaneously. But God's literally, if you take that step in faith, you say, I want A to be A and not A simultaneously. And somehow Yehovah says, we'll get there. So be blessed. Baruch haba Yehovah. I bless you and your family and everyone who's taking time to study this Torah. You will be blessed, I promise. You will be changed. You will be made new. You'll be given a new life. You'll be given a new family. You'll be just like Job. You'll be given a new everything, better than you had before.